Yakuza 0 is an open-world action RPG where you take on the role of a character with ties to the Yakuza, the traditional Japanese organised crime syndicates. This title specifically is a prequel to the long-running Yakuza series, which if you're like me, you can probably be forgiven for not having played any of them, as most tend to not be readily available outside of Japan. The series is developed and published by SEGA, with Yakuza 0 originally launched in Japan for PS3 and PS4 in 2015, but now available as a North American and European PS4 release from January 24th, 2017. The action of Yakuza 0 takes place in 1988, in the fictional settings of Kamurocho and Sotenbori, designed as recreations of real areas within Tokyo and Osaka. Both areas are dense entertainment districts with a lot of similarities, containing stores, restaurants, bars and nightclubs with plenty of character and detail to interact with. The story follows two main characters, Kazuma Kiryu and Majima Goro, both of whom you control in-game, switching back and forth every few chapters. These reluctant heroes find themselves involved in a real estate power struggle representing organisational control across Japan. Both of these guys also show up in later Yakuza games in the series, so this essentially serves as an origin story for them, fleshing out their early background and motivations quite well. The tale keeps you entertained with good pacing, twists and surprises, with themes of honour, betrayal, family, loyalty and vengeance weaved throughout with some great character building. There's a huge cast with lots of action, including sizable cutscenes and loads of dialogue to follow in between the bursts of furious combat. It's a seedy setting of underworld intrigue which you'll find yourself getting drawn deep into from the get-go. There's also a fair share of humour too. Some of it is probably the result of the cultural translation, but some of it is definitely a cheeky poking at the craziness of the setting in general. Either way, it should provide a few hearty chuckles. General gameplay consists of a fair deal of exploratory urban roaming, with lots of story cutscenes and stacks of fighting segments to keep you on your toes. The core gameplay is well paced and enjoyable, and the side attractions are quite the rewarding distraction for the most part. Handy objective markers are typically available on the map to guide you to your next objective, but there are some times where you won't get this obvious direction and you'll need to just explore or puzzle out how to proceed by following the story prompts. One big gripe I did have was with the inconvenience of the save game system. Unfortunately, games can only be saved at the various phone booths across the different city locations when you're in free roam mode, so there's significant portions of the game, especially during cutscene heavy story segments, that leave you completely unable to save the game until you reach the next opportunity. In fact, the very beginning story arc of the game goes for a good hour or so before you even get your first opportunity to save. It just seems like an entirely unnecessary restriction. There's lots of opportunities within the story, and while generally roaming the streets, to encounter adversaries and put them down in increasingly brutal fashion. Through a range of basic punches, kicks and jabs, supplemented by complex combos, power moves and improvised weapons from the general environment, there's plenty of ammunition to lay some hurt on any goons foolish enough to stand in your way. Both characters have a pretty broad variety of moves available and 3 distinct combat styles each, with their own strengths and weaknesses, which become available as you progress through the early story. Kiryu starts with Brawler as a base style, but later learns to use a mobile boxing style called Rush and a heavy tank-like style called Beast. Majima, on the other hand, defaults to the Thug base style, but then can use Slugger if you want to go to town on some fools with a baseball bat, or Breaker, which is basically a fight dancing style. You can switch through each of these fighting modes at will without any real penalty to suit whatever circumstance you may be in, but it's unfortunately super annoying that the game won't let you toggle between them at all when you're out of combat, which would be handy to set yourself up for the next one. You're also able to use what's called heat actions, regulated by a heat bar that fills during combat. This basically allows you to land extra powerful finishing move style attacks on your opponents, which tend to be as gratifyingly cinematic as it is devastating. These finishes are pretty bloody in most cases, seeing you smashing your opponent's heads through walls, into pavement, or even through urinals at one point. You wouldn't like a Yakuza when they're angry. Some of the combat animations and fighting character models do show as a bit dated, lacking a bit of the desired articulation to make them sufficiently smooth, and with some physics weirdness that's a little jarring. Picking up and swinging a full-sized couch like it's a light wooden bat being a good example. That said, the general combat flow once you get into it is pretty smooth and full of action, so many of the rough edges can be somewhat forgiven due to the pure fun value. There's no experience points per se in Yakuza 0, instead the character progression system is completely replaced by money. As you play, you earn cash and then quite literally invest it in yourself, spending up big to unlock new segments on an upgrade wheel for each fighting style your characters have. Some of these increase your basic stats like health and attack power in a universal sense, but some of the upgrades will open up a world of new combat combos through the use of diving kicks, stylish sweeps and quick recovery moves to name just a few. You can go for a balanced approach and level each of your fighting styles a bit, or invest in becoming a true master of a particular style and max out all of the upgrades possible at the higher cash levels. The cash sink can get to be quite extreme, which means that you need to find as many ways to earn as possible in order to get ahead. Cash can be gained during street fights by quite literally beating it out of your opponents like they're big squishy human pinatas, gained during various stages of the main story quest, collected through a variety of side pursuits in various areas of the map, or earned through sinking some time into the various business ventures that the characters have going for them. A typical street beatdown will yield about 500,000 yen, which seems good, up until you're looking down the barrel of your next upgrade at the value of 1 billion yen. Ouch! Fortunately, Kiryu's real estate business and Majima's cabaret club earnings have the capacity to bring in a shed load of money to offset these costs, but you'll need to sink a bit of time into the business side of gameplay to get those results. Now, what would an open world RPG set in Japan be without a silly amount of fun side games and activities? I'm happy to say that Yakuza 0 has a veritable truckload. If you want to spend time mucking about, you can play pool, darts, take some batting practice, arcade skill testers, karaoke, and of course, street fighting to earn some extra scratch. The minigames aren't really compulsory, aside from those that are nestled in with some story scenes, but do give you a good opportunity to nab some side cash or additional items that could come in handy later in the game. There's also a big selection of side quests which you'll encounter as you roam around the game world, many of which will double down on the pure hilarious weirdness of Japanese society and culture. Various people who you speak to will generally try and convince you to help solve their problems, which can lead to some pretty amusing situations that are really out of character for a young face-beating Yakuza. Oh, and there's girl photo collector cards scattered through the city as well, if that's your kind of thing. At an early stage while wandering around on the main story quest, you'll be introduced to a giant lumbering douchebag, Mr. Shakedown. This gargantuan jerkwad wants nothing more than to pick a fight with you wherever he can and literally bleed you dry of cash with every punch. If he spots you in either Tokyo or Osaka, he'll give chase, so unless you're feeling particularly ballsy, you might want to get real good at evading him. Anyone brave enough to take a crack at him has a chance to earn a good chunk of money back from the fight, but screw it up and you'll probably be dragging yourself off the ground with an empty wallet. Sucks to be that guy. Pretty much everything in the setting is visually stunning as you roam around the neon-washed grime of the urban environments the game has to offer. A huge amount of effort has clearly been made to distinguish each area to make it unique, and as you wander around the place it certainly feels lived in rather than just templated chunk cut and paste world building. This does quite a bit to aid navigation too, with unique environment detail that really stands out as you explore further. The graphics do a great job of capturing the feel of the city and the people to drop you further into full immersion as the tale unfolds. The game world boasts a lot of intricate detail, and it manages all this in a really smooth fashion with minimal load times. Now the character models at times leave a little bit to be desired, but on the whole they're distinctive, and they certainly shine during the considerably large number of animated cutscenes the game has to offer. There's a bit of a strange inconsistency with the nature of these scenes though. Some are like watching a full segment of an animated movie, while some are just still images with a small amount of facial feature movement and text box dialogue only. What's worse is when a scene switches between both of these modes for no obvious narrative purpose, making the presentation seem a bit of a budget approach and lacking the polish of the full motion video cutscenes. A perhaps questionable creative choice, but not a deal breaker by any means. The general game sound, especially in high traffic areas, does a really great job of making you feel immersed in the hustle and bustle of the busy Japanese streets. Walking past NPCs, you'll hear a range of different casual conversations with personality and variety, which helps the setting take on a vibrant life of its own. It's all in Japanese of course, but if you happen to know a bit of the language, then you're sure to get a bit more value from the attention to detail here. Fortunately, the voice acting in the story cutscenes of this Western release have subtitles to follow, so that's not an issue. And the actors have done a brilliant job in conveying the emotion and intensity required of the various character performances to keep you immersed in the drama. There's 3 gameplay difficulty settings, and a convenient choice available to switch down to an easier mode if you happen to get your butt kicked repeatedly, in case that starts to get frustrating or blocking you from further story progress. If you wanted to speed through Yakuza 0, spending only the basic required time on the story segments and key battles, you could probably bust through in around 30 hours. That said, if you want to get the most out of the game and actually enjoy all of the great side content and activities, you could probably squeeze about 60 to 80 hours I'd say. And you probably should. This game is great. As a word of warning though, the game is definitely super violent and has a large amount of adult content which could make it an awkward title to play in some environments. This is not one to have on when young eyes and ears are about, and don't say I didn't warn you when your significant other is wondering why you're working through a video game side quest involving underwear fetishes. Yeah, that's a thing. So all that aside, my experience with this game has been really memorable and I've enjoyed every minute of it. Yakuza 0 is a solid jumping on point for the series, and it has a load to offer for almost every RPG taste. There's great pacing throughout, with a compelling story to be experienced and absolute loads of content to keep you engrossed for a considerable amount of time. This is a title you shouldn't want to miss, and it gets a big thumbs up from me.